Hello, hello, and welcome to this vulnerable and raw and real episode of the Sovereign Society podcast. I just pushed record and there's tears in my eyes because I know the vulnerability and the honesty and the transparency that's about to come through with this episode. I do want to say there will be there will be triggers. This is a trigger warning. So I just wanted to make that clear ahead of time. It's been, as I record this, it's been a year and a couple days since I've had my first brain scan. And I feel like the past year has been a journey unlike anything I've experienced. You may have remembered, I think it was back in June, where I made an episode talking about losing my memory. And as I record this 2 weeks ago, I had another massive episode with convulsions and I hit my head on the floor and contorted my whole body. Like, thank God my mom was there to support me. And as I record this, if you're watching this on YouTube, because I have all my podcast episodes on YouTube as well, because I'm going to be building up my YouTube more, which will have more about marketing and systems and branding and just a whole bunch of tutorials in there. So if you haven't yet, go follow my YouTube, youtube.com/Sabrina Riccio. But if you're watching on YouTube, you can see my parents' backyard because I've been living back with my parents for the last year. And I've realized that this whole journey of, going to brain scans and doctor's visits and sleep studies and vials of blood drawn, and I'm getting more blood drawn to continue to see where my levels are. All of that, it's led me to this moment, and in deep reflection, I've finally gotten to the root of what's been going on, and I'm going to be talking about it in this episode. So if you haven't known, I've been having these episodes. I actually started back in 2015, so 7 years. So I've gotten like a Saturn quadrant, right? And it started actually when I went to Brazil to go visit John of God. So if you don't know John of God, people go to him for healing, and there's been more and more studies and more exposés talking about the cult that John of God is, and I wasn't aware of that at the time. I was just so desperate to heal because I've lived in pain my entire life. And I went to John of God, and I remember I was meditating there for like 8 hours, and some entity came into my energy, and I was crawling out. And around this time, 7 years ago, was when I went to John of God. And it was right before my grandmother was sick, and my mom's mom ended up dying of mad cow disease. And I found out the other day that my great-grandmother, my grandfather's mother, put a curse on my grandmother for leaving Italy and stealing her boy. So in my great-grandmother's eyes, stealing her boy to come to America. And I was raised by my grandparents because my parents were working all the time. And she put a curse on their future children. And this is a lot for me. So what happened was when my mom's, looking at my, the maternal side, my mom's older sister, she died at the age of 40 from a side effect from the flu shot. She got Guillain-Barré, but she was sick her entire life. I was with her all the time in the hospital getting blood transfusions when I was a little girl. My aunt, the middle daughter, all of her kids, essentially all of them, were born sick, and she had like 18 miscarriages and married a really abusive man who abused me as well. And then my mom, my sister and I were both born sick. My sister almost died twice. I was born with a croup where I couldn't breathe. And I've had just a lot of really challenging experiences on my journey. When I was 3 years old, my cousin who was 2, she died of leukemia, and I have like still perfect vision of her in Rattie's Children's Hospital in San Diego and watching The Little Mermaid with her in her bed. That Disney ended up making her the first deaf cartoon. My cousin Gabriella, because she watched Little Mermaid all the time, they drew her to see what, to show our family what Gabriella would look like at the age of 16. And she was the first deaf cartoon on TV. So that was super special. Like if you go on Disney Plus and you watch the Little Mermaid TV series, and you'll find Gabriella, and she has an octopus translator. That character was drawn for my cousin because her nurse, her brother was an illustrator for Disney. So that was super special. But I had that, and then my sister almost, died twice when I was 4. And when I was 10, my cousin got hit by a car. Like I had a lot of trauma. But the biggest trauma that I faced was around my body and my sexuality. And that has been the greatest challenge I've faced in my life. But I've been really actively working towards it. So my godfather, who is the dad of my cousin who died, and my older cousin, he was born with his intestines out and had 40 surgeries by the time he was 16. And then my cousin, who got hit by a car and still has rods in his legs, their dad, he came from Italy, and he was very abusive, physically, emotionally, verbally, to my aunt, my cousins, and myself and the family. And right when I was navigating through puberty, I was already had a lot of fear of my body because of being raised in the church, shaming, the body and femininity. And I came from an immigrant family, so like there wasn't a comfortable conversation around puberty or your sexuality or anything like that. So I had no one to really learn from, just a lot of the shame. And I was laying on my aunt's bed, who passed away, with my uncle's best friend's sons, and I was flirting with one of them. And my uncle, and this is where the trigger warning comes on, so if there's trigger warnings of sexual trauma and abuse, like, I just want to make that clear, and you can turn off the episode now. But my uncle, he came in wasted, and he called me a fucking slut, and then he beat the shit out of my grandfather in front of me. And I was like 10, 11, 12 years old around that time. And I instantly shut down my body. 4th of July comes, and I start my period. And I was late to school the day they started talking about periods. Go figure. And then never really had conversations about it. But that summer, after I started my period, I gained 40 pounds. So I went into 7th grade super overweight because I gained so much weight to protect myself. That's what happens when a lot of times when we gain a lot of weight, it's a space of protection. And even now, like, all of my excess weight is stored around my gut, and I've had issues with my gut, you know, almost my entire life, and digestive issues, empowerment issues, all sacral solar plex issues. And mind you, around this time, I was just getting familiar with computers and learning how to build websites and working with code and systems, and um, using a lot with like spreadsheets, pretty much everything that I teach in programs like Alchemize Your Systems or my business development mastermind, Business Alchemy. Like the things that I teach people, the things that I set up for people on the back end, I was learning all of this, and I was always like inappropriately touched by my computer teacher, like massaging me and him telling me my bra is crooked. And that's a lot to navigate through when you're going through puberty, and it's really inappropriate. And so I found myself, going through puberty and like afraid of men, and afraid of being touched inappropriately, afraid of being a slut because I had so much shame from the church, and just from like my upbringing around sexuality and my body, that I found myself really gaining weight to protect myself, because at that time in culture it was like big girls aren't appreciated or valued or like are belittled. Like luckily we live in a body positive environment and reality now, but in the 90s and early 2000s, fuck no. And then, I got my period and I started having really excruciating cramps and pain, and like my cycles weren't regulated. And then 9/11 happens, right? And so it's like, oh my gosh, like now I have this period, and like now there's war going on. Like, what the hell is this life that I'm living? So literally my entire life, I've lived in fear. Literally my entire life, I lived in through trauma. Literally my entire life, I felt like everyone else around me was having like a great life, but when the fuck is it my turn? So I like shut down like any sexual like desires that I had, because I had shame. I pushed away people I loved because, I didn't want to be in trouble. I did like everything I could to quote unquote protect myself so that I couldn't go to hell, because this is the mindset from the church, right? But I was living in my hell already. I was. And then, I had a lot of trauma in high school, a lot of death. My best friend took her life. And it's crazy, as I record this, it's like coming up to like 15 years since she took her life. And then I went to school, like right after I went to college, and I was just like a mess. And when I was in school, I had really low self-esteem because like I wasn't like the pretty girls, and I couldn't find my crew, especially in the beginning, when I was at San Diego State. And then I ended up leaving and was just like really deep in depression. And then I went to college. I transferred schools at Chapman, and my friend from high school, like we were in a very codependent, really unhealthy, toxic relationship, and it really fucked me up, until I realized like I don't need them in my life. And that's where an MDMA came in, and I like found God for the first time on the dance floor. And the first time I did MDMA was the first time I ever felt in my body and like desired and like in my body. And then, my senior year of college, when like I stopped being friends with that person, I like got in a car accident with a neck brace. I found myself like with shingles. But at the first, I didn't care because like the first time in my life, I felt like I was embodied. And like I met this amazing guy in my real estate class, but I was like, whoa, he's like way too hot for me. And I like totally doubted myself that I can have him. And, but I was like so passionate about life. It was the first time I felt like I was living. And then like I started going to raves and started going to festivals, and again I like found God on the dance floor. I met like people from all shapes, sizes, races, sexualities, like all walks of life, and that was super special for me because I was like, oh my gosh, I finally found like my people. And but I still had a lot of digestive issues, a lot of candida issues. And if you know anything about the chakras, for instance, in yoga, the solar plex is developed between the ages of 16 and 22 and 23. And I had a lot of trauma during that time that had me feel disempowered and like unworthy and challenged. And then it was around the time, and I felt like the stars were aligned for me to connect with this guy, but I still felt really unsafe. I felt unsafe in my body. I felt unsafe in my sexuality. I didn't feel safe. And even working with my therapist right now, the biggest thing that I've been working on a lot is safety. But if you understand safety, that's rooted in the root chakra, which is developed during the subconscious years of like 0 to 6, and can also be from ancestral upbringing, because you're a sponge absorbing, like your auric field at that time is a sponge, right? And you absorb everything. So it's very important to be discerning on what and who is in certain environments, right? And so I found myself like going through a lot of shit in those ages, like a lot of shit throughout my entire life. And when I had, this LSD trip at Coachella, my best friend came through because it was the anniversary of her suicide. She came through to let me know she was safe, and I was seeing so much of like what it was hard for me to receive love and receive like what I wanted to call in, because I still had a lot of low self-worth and self-doubt and a lot of unprocessed trauma that I didn't want to bring this person into. I wanted to take responsibility like for my energy. I broke his heart, and I that whole summer, you'll be able to read more about it in my upcoming book, but and then I got struck by lightning. And the thing is like, again, your auric field, whatever weakness you have, meaning any unprocessed traumas or emotions that you have, these energies outside of you can come in, and that's where they'll absorb. They're like the spongy areas, not your strong radiant areas in your body. And my weakest spots were my solar plexus and my root chakra, my root chakra, and my sacral chakra, my lower triangle. And for the last 10 years, I've been really working through a lot of shit and learning, and God has me on mission because like I pushed away the love of my life because I told him like, yo, I need to heal my family, because I knew like I needed to break this ancestral generational curse. So the other day I was talking to my aunt, and she told me that my great grandmother, going back to the story, my great grandmother put a curse on my grandmother for her children and her future generations. And, my biggest fear is always that I wouldn't be able to have children. But then when I sat in ayahuasca, I met my kids. And I knew I wanted to break this cycle because I didn't want my kids to go through the bullshit that I went through. Like, it was going to be a non-negotiable. That to me is what a sacred disruptor is. It's like, I'm going to end it here, and it ends now, and it's going to take me some work. The challenge was I fell into a lot of the false light that is in the spiritual community. So the other day, under the new moon, I decided to burn all of my false light books, my John of God triangles, and release it all. Like I've been able to have a more genuine, honest relationship with Jesus as well. And it's interesting because this is my 33rd trip around the sun, so I'm in my Jesus year. And I'm closing out my Saturn Return, which has been about like understanding patterns and what is ready to be learned and what's ready to be destructed to go into this next phase of my life, like really into my adulthood stage of my life. And so I burnt all of my spiritual books the other night, and I talked with my aunt, and she told me about that with my great grandmother. So she prayed over me too, and we took out all of the ancestral trauma, curses, hexes that could be placed. Because also, when you're a woman, when you are born female, you're carrying, your eggs are already in you when your mother is carrying you, and vice versa, and keeps going down and down and down. So that's something that I really feel like I've pinpointed. Like, so much of my dis-ease and illness has been around my sacral. So as someone who's always wanted to be a doula, as someone who's been passionate about inner child ancestral work, with so much of the research and studying and just like observation of my own journey, I know, one, that I'm not a victim of my past anymore and what happened, quote unquote, to me. This happened for me, because now that I have this awareness and this understanding, and I've navigated and conquered this, I have such a deeper level of compassion and how I want to help people understand the importance of doing deep ancestral work if you want to be able to build a future that's sustainable. And it's hilarious because on my arm I have tattooed, I got it right after my nonna died, that without suffering there would be no compassion. And it's a quote I got from A Walk to Remember from Nicholas Sparks, because to me, like, my grandmother did 10 days, no food, no water. And the last conversation I had with her was about, this journey I was on with this guy who I've released, because I've also had to get to this place in my life of, I'm an incredible woman, and that's something that was really hard for me to embrace and to honor for a very long time, because I still had a lot of really low self-worth and low self-esteem. But I had to let him go, because I need to open myself up for the man who really wants to show up for me. So I'm not going to be waiting for anyone. If he wants to come in my life, he can come back in. But if some other man wants to come in that's strong enough to be with me, and I just think of Sheryl Crow and Stevie Nicks singing, "Are You Strong Enough to Be My Man?" But I've had to navigate through this for myself, for the future of my family, and for my community, so that I can be in my full sovereign embodiment. I refuse, and I encourage this with you too, I refuse to allow ancestral karma, ancestral trauma, ancestral conditioning, anything from the past that is not in alignment with the highest benevolence of truth and love and compassion, with my truth. I'm willing to release it and let it go. I give it up to God. I'm making space to call in and to actualize what it is I'm here to desire. So now that, I've been getting more comfortable talking about my sexuality and my body, and, being celibate my entire life, and really just creating a podcast episode talking about it too. Like, I would have never thought I've had the courage before to be so vulnerable to share this, but here I am, because I refuse to allow anything or anyone outside of me, that's behind me, in my past, to have power over me anymore. And that's why I'm passionate about helping people find their sovereign embodiment, because this has been my journey. And this is what I want you to understand. Whether you resonate or relate with this message or not, there's something from your past or something that you've been able to conquer. And once you've been able to conquer it, you have the ability to build a business to help people that are a couple steps behind you, that you can lead with integrity. And now that I'm back in therapy and I'm working with my therapist, Frank, who understands psychedelics, and that's the other piece I want to share. Like, being through so many doctors in this past year, you need to make sure you're working with people who speak the same language as you, where there isn't judgment and understanding. Because I've seen so many doctors who shame or don't understand like the world of psychedelics and place their judgments, and you need people that are supportive. So that doesn't matter. That goes with doctors, that goes with coaches, that goes with mentors, friends. You need to be around people who speak the same language as you, especially when you're looking for help. And so my therapist, Frank, who I was working with yesterday, he was talking about how it's called mindsight. And mindsight is when you're able to be seen, where you feel seen and heard by someone. And so working with him and, and telling him like, yo, I really feel like I got to the root of what's going on, and it all goes down from sexual trauma, because trauma doesn't have to necessarily be like the action of it. You know what I mean? There can still be a verbal, other actions that aren't necessarily mean penetration or whatnot. There can be traumas. If trauma is trauma, if it's something that was traumatic to you, there's no one that needs to put it in a box of this is what trauma means and this isn't what trauma means. If something was a traumatic situation for you that played over and over and kept you in a consciousness trap and loop, that is trauma. And so, I was talking with my therapist, and I got out of that conversation, and I'm like, all right, cool. He's like, the biggest thing that you're working through is safety. And I'm working through that. I'm keeping it like really low key this month, because I want to get stronger, and I'm finishing writing my book, and I'm just taking care of my health. And, the biggest thing too is like, it's important to have conversation and to express yourself. And if people out there aren't seeing you, they're not hearing you, they're not checking in on you, it may be time to get rid of them in your life as well. Because I've also been seeing that, like, I've been doing my best to reach out to friends to let them know what's going on. Some of them are like, hey, yeah, like we'll chat, and then no show, right? I don't have time and space for that in my life, and I pray that you realize that you don't either, because you are here on mission. There's a reason why you're here, and it's up to you to honor your boundaries, honor your worth, value your time and your energy, and have your non-negotiables on how you choose to be treated. So for me, I'm, been staying with my parents the last year, but I never really had this quality time with them except like 2 weeks out of the year when we go on vacation, or otherwise I was working with them, and they did their best. Like, I'm very grateful. They gave me a great life in the material world that I'm super supportive and grateful for. But I also needed that emotional, spiritual connection. And I had a lot of anger and resentment towards my mother, because she never spoke to me about my period or my body. So if you're a mother and you have a young daughter, as I'm coughing, please don't make this taboo, and talk with them and be comfortable. And if you have a son as well, let them know, like, it's safe for them to express their emotions, and it's safe for them to, navigate through what they're going through puberty, and how to treat women as well, or little girls. I think this is the things that we need to continue to integrate and to share in our collective. And these are the pieces that we need to embrace and honor and share more of and speak more about if we want to really, especially our generation. Like, if you're a millennial, we're the last generation to remember what life was like pre and post technology. And I was talking about this with some of my friends last night. Like, there are certain traditions and things from our ancestors that still need to be treated with reverence and respect. We cannot forget about those things. Things like the importance of life without technology, the power of plant medicine, being very discerning on what you eat, the nutrients that are in real food. Those are just a few of the examples. The importance of having conversation, the importance of, honing in, taking care of your health and well-being, not be so reliant on technology. These are things that helped our ancestors survive that we need to continue while also adapt to evolution. So it's like there's a neutrality with it. It's not a this or, it's a this and, right? We have to understand that there's a reason for everything. What we've navigated through, there's a divine purpose to it. There's a reason why you chose the family you chose to be part of. And the situations that you've conquered, the challenges that you've been able to navigate through and overcome, you have the ability now to build a business online, which is great, and help people. This is what a niche is, right? If you can really hone in on a specific niche, something that you've been able to conquer. For instance, maybe you've had issues with hormones, you've been able to overcome it, and now you're a hormone specialist. Like I had Amber on the podcast, right? You can see here or listen on the show notes to that conversation. But when I was talking with Amber too and telling her like, yo, I really feel like I got to the root, because she reached out to check in on me. I feel like I got to the root of what's going on, and I've had a hormonal imbalance. But when you look deeper, that hormonal imbalance that I had was because I had unprocessed trauma around my sexuality and my body, and sexual trauma from my past. So obviously that's a weak area of my life. And this is why I've been passionate about helping people do inner child work. Programs like Thrive especially. I want you to get to the root of what's going on so that you can get out of your own way. And once you're able to recognize what it is, that thing in the past, it doesn't have power over you anymore. So you can be in your sovereignty, you can be independent, you can be in your freedom, where nothing or no one outside of you can steer you off course. And so I wanted to come on because it's been a hell of a ride, and I know there's been a divine purpose to it. I've just been in total surrender and trusting. It's been an opportunity for me to get closer with my parents, which is something I've always wanted. Because when why I embarked on my spiritual journey was, and there's like a little fairy flying around right now. Why I embarked on the spiritual journey was that I told this guy, I was like, I need to heal my family. I want to heal my family. Like, I'm choosing to be the sacred disruptor for my lineage, and you have the right to do so too. You have the right to pave the path and set the tone for the generations to come. And whether or not you want to have children or not, doesn't matter. What is your life in the future that you want to do? Because if you are healing yourself and you're in that space, it's going to create a ripple effect, not just in your community, not just for your clients or your family, like your immediate family, in terms of like your partner and your children, but it can also impact your relatives, because they're like, wow, I know what you've navigated through, and I see where you are now. How the hell did you do that? Like, what did you do? Tell me your secrets. And you can lead by example. And I feel like that's how we really help heal this planet, is by leading with integrity. And so to lead with integrity, I want you to embrace, like, what are the things that are trying to stop you from being in your integrity, that are trying to stop you from being you, that are from your past, and say enough is enough. Give it up to God. Ask for help, ask for support, be vulnerable enough to say like, yo, I'm struggling right now. I need help. Like, it's been really hard for me to be on Instagram and being like, yo, I need help. Like, prayers up. Like, please keep me in your prayers. Receiving is very challenging for me, or has been very challenging for me up until now, because I've been so detached from my feminine essence and my feminine energy. It was something that has been really hard because I had a lot of low self-worth and the who am I's and all of that. I still carried a lot of that on a personal level, on a business level. Like, I know what I've been capable of sharing and delivering and creating. And I'm excited to be coming back and, launching Sovereign CEO. If you want to work with me, in a 3-month container. If you want to work with me and start your business, like I'm doing a 6-month group container, so you can have support with that as well with Business Alchemy. But I love what I do. I love helping people create systems so that they can create smarter, not harder. I love helping people go to the very, very, very depth. And that's what experiences like Thrive, where there's like a 120-page workbook for you to like really reflect on what's going on. I want people to go to the depth of their soul to create this strong, solid container so that they can receive and embrace and honor what they're worthy of in this lifetime. So I want to thank you for your love and support. If you've been here, if you've been supporting me, the Sovereign Society podcast, I started a brand new Instagram. It's at Sabrina Riccio. I was able to move my old handle. I just needed to get rid of the energy after I got hacked in December. It just wasn't feeling right. So I started from scratch. I'm on a brand new account. If you haven't yet, go follow me at Sabrina Riccio. You can also follow the Sovereign Society podcast on Instagram at Sovereign Society Podcast. If you loved this episode, please leave a rating and review on iTunes. It's been hard for me to ask for help, but I need your help. I want to spread this message. I need to be vulnerable enough to ask for that help and not be like, I got this all. Like, I'm working on being receptive and receiving, which is something that's been super a journey for me. I'm working on this. I am safe to receive. And I'm working a lot through that right now. But I receive your love. I receive your support. I receive with so much gratitude, this community. And if you've been with me and you've seen me through the highs and lows, I just want to thank you. I'm really looking forward to see what's in store, sharing more about business and branding and systems and sovereign embodiment, my book, health and well-being. Like, I'm just doing what I can to be a servant for God and to serve my community and to do it with integrity and love and devotion and compassion and genuine drive. And so, working through healing my hormones and my body, my sexuality, my sensuality, being open to receive love for the first time in my life and not be afraid or push away love because thinking I'm unworthy or I'm damaged goods, because I've had all those stories. Those stories don't serve me anymore. And I share that because if there's still stories that you're telling yourself on, I'm not worthy enough to get this client, I'm not worthy enough to charge this price, I'm not worthy enough to be in this relationship, whatever that is limiting those stories that you're still believing, we're going to dismantle them together right here, right now. We're devoting and making that declaration right now, right here, right now, that we are dropping all insecurities, all doubts, all limiting beliefs, all fears. And I'm just seeing the blood and the energy and the light, more so than anything, the light of Christ, to just really shine light on anything that is false, anything that is not in alignment with the highest benevolence of truth and love and compassion, and to transmute and alchemize that. My relationship with Jesus is also evolving, and I'm releasing this episode around the time of Easter. And that in itself, I've really been healing my own relationship with like the ultimate ascendant master, Jesus, and not having shame of talking about it. I still love working with a lot of Mother Mary, who I have tattooed on me, and Kuan Yin, and so many other beautiful gods and goddesses from other cultures as well. But I've also been able to really strengthen my relationship with Christ, and that was the true love that I have been working on fostering and building that relationship up with again, because I didn't have that for a long time, because I had a lot of shame and guilt and doubt and insecurity. One, about talking about it, and two, just about like what I was taught in the church to that of shame and being, everything that isn't actually true Christ consciousness. So I've been really working with that as well, and I have no shame in saying that. But I want to thank you again for being here. I want to thank you for being on this journey with me. And I invite you to let me know what you think. I'm here for you. I'm keeping it low key, but send me a message. Thank you again for your love. Thank you for your support. It's been, like I said, a wild ride, but I really feel like I've gotten to the other side. and I'm just taking care of my health and well-being. I'm taking care of, being present, taking it moment by moment, trusting in the divine plan, surrendering it all up to God, whether it be with my business, whether it be with my health, whether it be with my person. Like, I'm just complete in total surrender, knowing that the best is going to come to me. And I want you to understand that too. Like, you are worthy of experiencing everything and more. You have to believe in yourself, and you have to give it up, release control, drop the doubt, and allow love, true, genuine, pure love in your sovereign embodiment to really lead the way, and do it with the highest love and intention. So again, thank you. I appreciate you. I love you.